Can you put the camera on?
I don't know. I tried, but I couldn't get the. Oh wait, here we go. Is it gonna work?
Wow.
Oh my gosh, you can see me. Hi.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. Amazing.
Catch you at the
Amazing.
end
I
of
need
the
to
stream here.
absolutely, absolutely. I need to make this oh, here we go. Here we go. And then we get rid of that. Okay, amazing. So now we are joined
Wow.
by a very special guest after all of that intro, which was quite fun actually. I don't know whether you
Yeah.
saw any of that. But would you like
Yes,
to
I did.
good start. Would you like to introduce yourself and then just tell us a bit about yourself, and then we can have a chat about that,
Yes.
and then get into your situation.
Yes. Hi, I'm Joanna. I am 34 years old. I'm a devout Christian woman. I live at home with my parents. It's been a very interesting several years, but basically, I've just been kind of, traipsing through life, basically without any sense of who I should be dating or like what I should be looking for in a man. And I think the biggest issue for me is like, I don't have a very high body count. I literally have like, I think I have like four guys that I've ever been with my entire life. And I'm very emotionally attached to people when I'm dating them. So I'm
Yeah,
I'm not just like a one night stand person. I like to get to know somebody. And a lot of times, and I've realized this recently due to some self-reflection that I've been going through, that I have a tendency to believe people. Like I'm very easily manipulated, very easily coerced into
yeah.
things. And I just don't always understand a guy's true intentions. And I think that's the biggest hurdle that I've been facing, as well as I'm a homebody. Like I love staying home. And so I don't really get out. I don't really see anybody. I don't have a social life. Like I prefer it that way, kind of,
Hmm.
because it's way less drama that way.
Yeah.
I literally have like one female friend. So
Nice.
hi.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for the introduction. And
Yeah,
sorry, I was calling you by the wrong name before, actually. So apologies for that as well.
that's okay. Yeah, it's my username. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. Good stuff. Before we get into all of that, though, what did you think about that list of icks? Then, what's your take on that? Some of this stuff's pretty crazy,
Um,
right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, I mean, I've been in this sphere for a while where you guys have been talking about, and by you guys I mean like people who are in this topic
Yeah.
realm, who discuss this regularly. I've heard a lot of that consistently throughout. And I think, I mean, I don't know if I have an opinion on it yet because I just started diving into it. But I do think that a lot of it is kind of demographic based, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it just depends on like who you expose yourself to and stuff like that.
I mean, I would imagine a lot of this stuff is coming from probably younger women, like maybe I guess you're millennial, right, Pat?
I am, yes.
But maybe even for Generation Z, some of this stuff is probably coming from as well, right? You know, it sounds like
Yeah.
quite because, like, as Brett pointed out in later on in the video, it's like some of this stuff, like if she's saying it's an ick that the guy can cook, and then maybe a few years later, that girl's going to think, actually, no, I quite like a guy who can cook, you know, like it.
Yeah.
So that may well
Yes.
change as time goes on. But it's interesting though because you mentioned having a low body count, but I mean that if you
Yeah.
as you know, I mean watching these shows, I mean most guys, if anything, that is going to be a plus point for you, right? So it's interesting that you
Right.
mentioned that as being sort of a to your detriment.
It was to my detriment because it was not what I preferred. So for me, ideally, I would have never had a body count.
Oh, I see.
But
Right.
due
Okay.
to
Okay.
my inability to understand when somebody's manipulating me, and I'm not putting the blame on them. This is totally, I didn't understand this about myself. I went into this blind, so I should have done the work on myself first before heading into all of what is dating,
Yeah,
essentially.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So, what are you looking for now then? I mean, you're looking for marriage, right? And what you mentioned when we
Yeah,
first spoke on email, you mentioned actually you don't feel like your standards are ridiculous in the way that some of these modern women are.
correct.
So what are you looking for?
Oh, I cannot tell you how many times I've seen this and I've heard this in the past few months of being in this sphere of dating and understanding these things about men and women. I have heard again and again and again how women want, oh, he's got to be 6 foot, or at least he's got to be making 6 figures. Drives me nuts because I'm like, that is not where you're going to find love. You're literally misinterpreting what love is. Love is a connection between two souls. And the only way you're going to find that is if you have an open mind. You have to think, I want a soul connection. That's what matters. That's how I'm going to foster and facilitate a love connection.
Yeah.
And so basically my standards are, you have to have good character, you have to be God-fearing, and you have to be God-honoring. Those are my 3 things, literally. That's it. I don't care if you're a short person, tall person, don't care, like, at all.
Super ugly.
It's like, we're going to have
have we got a looks threshold here, or is that? I mean, that's secondary, right?
Not at all. Yeah, I have no looks threshold. I almost married a man one time who literally looked like trash. So I do not care what people look like, what men look like at all. Like, does not hold a candle to what I care about.
Well, that's, you know, I mean, it's refreshing to hear that, right? Because a lot of guys are going to be watching this, or they'll watch the replay and they'll be like, oh, this is, you know, why isn't every woman like this? Because it does seem like we are held to this standard of, you know, well, you've got to be all of these things that you mentioned. And it's great that you know, you're looking at it in a different way, but without giving any details you don't want to give, could you say a bit about what happened? I mean, why has this, obviously you've mentioned these 4 guys. I mean, why is it not? Right. And then they kind of manipulated. I mean, was it that they ultimately weren't looking for anything long term, or they kind of pulled the rug from under you, or how did it end up in this situation?
So one of them, basically, well, 2 of them actually were violent. Basically, the one, it was like in the middle of a party, and he like held me up against the wall, and like he had his hand around my neck, and I was like, okay, I was not phased, but I knew that if that happened again, that I'd be conditioning him to believe that that was okay to do to a woman.
Yeah.
So I told him right away, I said, if you do this again, that's it. I can't be with you, because that's just conditioning you to do something I don't want you to ever do, both for your sake and for mine.
Yes.
And then the other guy was quite verbally and emotionally abusive, as well as just highly, highly manipulative. And I think later on I found out that he was addicted to Adderall and just had a lot of personality disorders that I wasn't aware of in the beginning, because, you know, on the outside I was like, oh, he has, you know, good friends, he's very good with people. And then like as I got to dating him, I was like, oh my gosh, like this man is a nightmare. Like I didn't know that from the beginning, and I kind of was kicking myself later realizing that.
Yeah. Okay. And where did you meet these guys? Was this just from locally, or
organically, all except the one that I almost married, I met him online, but it was through like a mutual friend on Facebook. So
okay. Yeah. So I suppose the obvious question then, because the obvious advice in this situation would be, well, the local church, the church that you go to, the local religious community you're part of.
You would think.
I'm assuming you've obviously, it's a no-brainer. So obviously you've thought of that. So what's the issue there? Why is that not sort of proving fruitful?
So being a Christian, one of the main things that they push on the youth, and I've seen this in both college setting and church my whole life, is they push for you to get married right away. So a lot of these men who are in this church are already married with children.
Right.
There's really no single guys unless they're teenagers, which I'm obviously way out of that range.
How do you feel about that generally? I don't know if you saw that stream we did the other day when we had when Pearl was here, and we were talking about the whole Christ pill thing versus, well, what they call the red pill, and one of the things, you know, you've got this Sovereign Bra guy who's like quite an evangelical Christian dude, and he's making the argument, well, these people who are sleeping around, it's all degeneracy, and you know, you should get married as virgins and all of that. And I suppose the counter argument to that, I suppose, is, but you don't really know each other before, like if you physical intimacy, you know, you kind of, if you've had it before you get into that kind of contract. In some ways you could argue from a secular point of view, well, that's better because you know what you're getting into, and if you guys are compatible or not. I mean, where do you stand on all of that?
I mean, I think a big part of what I've learned about you know, social media and things regarding that it's like the whole, I just love that this whole Christ pill thing has come into play. Like now that we have the red pill, the black pill, what's next? The blue pill? I mean,
Well,
we're
there is a
just
blue
going
pill.
for it now.
So,
We're just heading for it.
well, the blue pill, they normally, when they talk about the blue pill, they normally mean just the sort of the normie position, which is like, oh, it's all like a Disney romance and everything's going to work out, and women are pure and innocent and virginal for the most part, and whatever, it's the very sort of TV romantic comedy kind of version of things. Whereas the red pill was always
Right.
meant to be, no, this is the truth under the surface. And then I suppose
Right.
the Christ pill is more, well, actually, we should all be living according to the Bible, and all of this other stuff is degenerate and it's causing harm in society. Which
Right.
they have some point to that. I suppose the pushback that we were making is, yeah, but realistically, is that actually going to change?
Correct. And I've been hearing this lately with people who are red pill, is that they are kind of responding to feminism. They're like,
Yeah.
well, now that feminism is here, this is how we're going to run things. And I understand that, but a lot of times when I'm seeing these guys talking about this specific, pill, if you will, it always seems like there's some sort of hurt that happened to them.
Mm.
And I feel like it's always coming from a place of that instead of logic or reasoning. Maybe to them it's logic and reasoning, right? I don't know. And I never want to judge anybody based off, what I'm seeing at surface level. But to me, it always seems like even when I watch Myron or if I watch these other people, it always feels like there's something going on underneath the surface.
Yeah. Well, that may be true. I mean, obviously, I know Myron. I can't speak. I don't know so
Right.
much about his, the whatever past traumas he had to get in there. I mean, I think he was quite. I certainly think he was quite out of shape as a younger guy. I think he really had to work hard to on a lot of areas in his life. So probably, as from what I know, I think he probably wasn't having huge success in terms of dating, and then he sort of transformed and he became a different kind of guy. So yeah, there may be
Right.
what you're saying. Some of that. But I suppose, so as far as your situation is concerned, I mean, the first thing really is we need to find a way to get you meeting more guys, because it's only
Right.
through, I mean, it's only through meeting more people that you're going to find one that might be a candidate. So it is quite tricky, because the way you presented it at the moment is that you don't go out and socialize very much anyway. I'm guessing, the church community you're part of, I mean, I don't know where you live exactly, but maybe that's the only place that you would go. Is there any other kind of community? Is there a larger city nearby that you could go and check out some, or are you just very affiliated with that one church, and so you're just going to spend all your time there?
I mean, I'm kind of like in the greater Chicago area. I
Mm.
don't really venture out there much more than I ever used to. Cause like, I mean, I've pretty much like I lived in Chicago for like a year and I was like, okay, it's not all it's cracked up to be. It's a little bit drama central and people are kind of
Mm.
cold out there. So I feel like it wasn't the scene for me. But I just recently started going to a new church due to the other one kind of having like a falling out.
Okay.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go here. But I did recently join a new Bible study group in that church. So hopefully, I mean, they do have some type of mixers that I'm not really quite sure of yet because like I said, I just started joining this church. Um, so maybe there's like a singles thing in there somewhere. I don't know.
Mm.
I will have to contact them for sure, but I think that's really the only social activity that I've been doing as of late.
Yeah. No, definitely. It really is a question. I mean, it's like when we advise guys. I mean, with guys, it's even more the case. There needs to be, you know, guys need to go out and talk to as many women as possible in order to bring somebody in. Now, with women, it's maybe slightly less, because women tend to be the more coveted of the genders, if you know what I mean. But at the same time, it seems like your circle is very small. So that's the first thing, because if you're just sitting at home and you're not really getting out at all, and you're not online, then you're just not going to meet anybody. So that's the first obvious thing that we need to address. I mean, what about Christian? I know something like Tinder is probably off the table, or these dating apps,
Right.
but there are some Christian sites, aren't there, that you can meet guys? Have you ever thought about that?
I have. I'm not a huge fan of apps due to past experiences, But I will say, I think I've heard from other people that a lot of times these people will join these apps pretending to be Christian, and then they like
Catfishing is,
coerce people or fool
yeah.
people into thinking just because they want a larger dating pool or whatever it might be that their motive is.
God, that's a bit risky. Nevertheless, you know,
Yes,
to be honest, it
it's
might be worth having a go, because you do need to
for
open up
sure.
your options. And then it comes down to this thing you were talking about, manipulation and not knowing if the guy's being manipulative. I mean, it's like any sort of dating app situation. There are going to be people on there with bad intent, male and female, you know, and a lot of it is weeding out the people that are, you know, you're just like, oh, I don't get a good feeling about this, and so on and so forth. But I mean, and just out of interest, as far as moving forward is concerned, I mean, you would want to have children, you want to have a family, or where do you stand on that?
I'm pretty open to that now. I think I was kind of neutral in my earlier years, but now I think like I don't know why this happens, but like when I hear someone as smart as Elon Musk saying that we need more kids, then I'm like, okay, I want to help. I want to find solutions to this because I'm a solution-based person.
Yeah,
And so I think that was what really drove me to be more interested.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then also hearing people talk about how it's like our divine purpose is to have kids. And I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, people have different opinions on that. I mean, I think from a sort of a, it seems like from a Christian standpoint, it is very much that is your raison d'etre, etc. And I think a lot of people believe that. I mean, I personally think on a species level, yes, absolutely. That is the whole purpose, is to replicate the species. I think on an individual level, it's slightly different because you know you might have other things that you want to contribute, and maybe that's not your path or whatever. But putting that to one side, if that is something you want, I mean, obviously you're in your 30s now, 34, you know, so there's still time, but you know,
Right.
obviously time catches up with us,
On the
right? So,
double. Mm-hmm.
but you still look, I mean, you know, you look good in the now. I mean, and remember, for guys as well, it is very much aesthetics do play a part. Now, maybe for Christian
Yeah,
guys, it, you know, maybe Christian guys is going to be a bit different because they're
depends.
gonna say, well, it's less about superficiality and it's about the faith and everything else. But I think if you could maybe get onto one of these apps and get some really good pictures done, you know, with your hair down and like some good makeup and everything else, and just, you know, just make sure that you cover the aesthetic side, not in a tacky way, not in some kind of you know, anything like that, but just so that you're marketing yourself as best as possible to bring people in. And then you want to basically just try and vet the people. And then I would say, I mean, one of the things that I don't do a lot of dating app stuff. I don't do a lot of online dating stuff. But when I do it, I find one thing that is really good is actually just to get on a Zoom call like this with the person, or get on a call with the person and actually just have a conversation with them for 15, 20 minutes. And you can, I've found, actually get a pretty good sense of the person in that time. So I would say those are two things. A suggestion that's come in on the on here is actually join a volunteer group, um,
Oh yeah, that's right.
or a hobby club
Of
might help to
course.
get to get some exposure. So there might be, I don't know whether
Yeah.
there's something that you could do that would be in line with your, you know, your faith, maybe like helping the local
Right.
community or something like that.
That's an interesting idea, actually.
Because that really is, I mean, like, it's as simple as it sounds, but you know, we all need to get out there and meet people if we're gonna bring anyone into to be intimate with, right? And then it
Right.
seems like for you specifically, there is this issue of then the vetting procedure. And I mean, it might be, and I don't want to get into any sort of like victim blaming type thing here, but it does, perhaps there was an element that you were attracted to these dudes who were slightly toxic. I mean, would that be unfair to
Oh yeah.
say? Or
Yeah, I think I just didn't, that's why I was saying before, like I think I just didn't realize that about myself. And so I was kind of kicking myself later on,
I
finding that out.
I think, you know, we one of the red pill tenets is always like women, often particularly younger women, you know, they are, whether they're Christian or not, you know, they can be attracted to these more somewhat more toxic traits. You know, the whole thing of like the bad boy and the nice guy finishes last and all that kind of stuff. And then as you start to get a bit older, you recognize, well, hang on a minute, that didn't really serve me, and that's not what I'm looking for, because I want to actually meet somebody to build a life with or whatever. So that might just be a natural progression that you went through. I mean, again, I'm not saying you expected this guy to hold you up against the wall when you first met him, but perhaps there was something in the way he came across that was a little bit toxic, and that was part of, I don't know, you know what I'm saying, on a subliminal level.
Yeah.
But now, obviously, you need to make the effort to try and rule those people out, you know? And it's got to be like,
Yeah.
okay, right. So what's this dude going to bring to the table? Is he actually a good prospect for long term, you know? And I would say doing maybe Zoom dates, you know, it's a COVID era thing now, isn't it, really? But maybe doing
Yeah.
some Zoom dates first is actually going to be a
Mm-hmm.
good way to sort of pre-vet them, to find out, okay, what's my initial sense of this person? Does this person seem to be a good person or a bit of a maniac, right? And then if they pass that test, then maybe you can meet them publicly and take it from there. You know what I mean?
Right. Mm-hmm. 100%.
Um,
Yeah.
so actually, Boundless Guardian's given a 4.99 super chat. Thank you very much for that. And he says he's got a question. He says, for the guest, do you think that marriage is still the end goal for you, or are you just looking for a long-term relationship with monogamy?
For me, anytime I get into a relationship, marriage is the end goal. It is always the thing that I am striving for, because for me, dating long term is kind of in a sense pointless, because you're not really working towards anything. You're just kind of staying stagnant in a first stage relationship, and you're
Yeah.
not really trying to build anything.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm guessing that as part of your, you know, your belief system, right? I mean, marriage has got to be the right thing anyway for what you ultimately where you want to end up.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, do you get approached by guys? Do you get any guys who are sort of coming through? I mean, what about social media? Do you use social media? Do you use like Instagram and things like this?
Yeah, I got rid of my Instagram, but I do have X, and there's like,
There's some weird
I
guys on
mean,
X
I've
though.
had maybe one or two guys message me in the last couple years. I mean, it's very like, I
Yeah.
don't get I don't get people messaging me.
Yeah.
So,
No, okay, fair. Well, fair enough. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that anyway, because, like, you know, even if you were on Instagram, I mean, the kind of quality of the guys who are going to come through there. I think for you, you need to some sort of Christian dating site. I think would be a good place to at least experiment, because you need to
okay.
have that filter. You need to have that filter, don't you? Like, you don't just want to meet. Or do you? I mean, what if you met a guy and he was a good guy, he was caring, hardworking, you know, whatever, but you did say God fearing was one of your main things,
Yes.
didn't you? So it kind of has to
Yeah,
be.
and that's kind of why I specified that, because the guy that I almost married, he did want to raise his kids in the church. So if we had had children, that's how he would have wanted to raise them. So
Mm.
he wasn't Christian though. He was, I believe, pagan, because he worshipped the gods like Odin and stuff like that. And I was totally okay with that,
Oh,
because
you
it's
were.
his own personal, yeah, it's his own personal spiritual journey. But he was the one who would bring me to the Christian church when I was barely kind of going during that time in my life. And so it was him who kind of brought that aspect back into my circle of things that I do.
Oh, what? So you weren't really as devout before that
I I've always been Christian. I accepted Christ back in I believe it was like when I was 6 years old,
then?
but it's been a journey. I've always been very morally like my moral compass is very strong. It is very like on point, but my beliefs and my categorization of the Christianity that I've had has changed over the years. But I've always been Christian. And recently I've really started to take it up more, just because I've wanted to kind of find more guidance in my life.
Mm. Mm. Well, I mean, so it was interesting that you accepted the pagan guy, though. I mean, so if there was a guy from another
Yeah.
faith, I mean, would that potentially? I mean, surely it's going to be best if the guy is also Christian, right? I mean, or would you?
Yeah. We would just have to have extensive conversation about like, hey, how do we want to raise kids? Like, how are we going to, like, because one of the best things about being of the same faith is that you can have a shared connection with um the same God, the same faith.
Mm.
That kind of, because what God is for Christians is we, it's like our stronghold. It's everything that we hold our morals to, our values to. we don't ever feel like we need to sway from that because of what other people say or anything like that. It's almost like it's the lens through which we live life. So you know how people have like rose colored glasses or something.
Mm,
For us, it's like that's how we filter things through life. So it's a great way to for a relationship to be guided, to be navigated. And I mean,
mm,
like, the thing is too, it's like you if you're taking the kids to church, and that's the other thing too, is like I want my kids to be Christian, but I'm not going to force them. I want them to want it for themselves. So as long as I'm showing them through my example that this is what I believe in, this is how I live my life, that will be enough for me to feel like, okay, I'm raising my kids right, I'm doing the right thing for them by showing them how I'm behaving in life. And it will give them an idea of like, this is why it's good to follow the Bible, because it benefits you in the long run.
mm, mm. Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. So I think, Tony Robbins talks about, when you want to make changes in your life, you have to take what he calls massive action, and it's like just doing
Right.
more stuff. And I think in your situation, it really is about thinking, okay, I need to just be exposed to as many people as I can be, whether that is, attending whatever social events, the Bible study group does, whether it is going and joining a volunteer group or even a couple of volunteer groups. I mean, there might, well, as I say, I was going to say even things outside of religion, but then again, we come back to the issue of then the people you meet might not be religious, so there's that. But and also, I
Yeah.
would say researching some of the Christian dating sites, and
True.
even though I know we're all skeptical about dating sites, and it's a bit like but ultimately, it is a good way to screen because the people on well taking
The
aside people
majority.
taking aside people who are faking it, the majority of people on there probably are going to be genuinely religious, and they are going to be looking for people. So you need to just have, it's like with sales, you need to just have an inflow of
True.
potential leads, and then you need to narrow those down to be like, okay, is this guy acceptable, is this guy not, is this guy possible, is this guy not, and then take it from there. But I would say, look, I mean, getting to 34, I would say now is the time really to sort of step it up and really just sort of make this a focus, I would say, for the next couple of months, and just see where you get to. I mean, what about the living at home thing? Is that just something that you? I mean, not that that necessarily makes a huge difference, but is that something? Did you ever think about moving out of home, or did you ever even think about moving to a different community or a larger city or something?
Yeah. So this is a very interesting story. I'll try to be as brief as possible.
Mm,
The first time I moved out was many years ago, but then the person I was living with moved out, and then they sold their house, so I couldn't live there anymore. The second time, I was kicked out because of COVID. That was the landlord's requirement that you get vaccinated, otherwise you can't live there. So I got kicked out that very same
right.
day.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And then the next time I tried moving out, my apartment got flooded 5 inches, so I had to move out completely at that very same day. So it's been an interesting journey. And then this year was very rough for my family, so I just decided, you know what, I'll just stay here until like things settle down. So
No. Fair
it's
enough.
been
Okay.
very interesting.
Well, okay. I mean, that doesn't, like I say, it doesn't necessarily. If it was a guy, I would say, you need to move out and be independent, because maybe
Yeah,
if you meet somebody, you want to bring
yeah,
them back. But for you, it's less of a big deal, really. I just wonder whether the number of guys in your immediate catchment area, because you said you're sort of outside Chicago now, right? So maybe it's a smaller
yeah,
community. Maybe there's just fewer guys around. That could be problematic as well.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's kind of an interesting situation because due to being such an online world now, we're all using social media, we're all connecting through our phones. It's a lot harder to meet people organically, but I do really like, I think it was that super chatter who said the volunteer idea, because it's like
yeah.
that would be so just good because you're meeting people whose hearts are in the right place. They
Yes.
want to help people. They want to connect with people. And actually, last night my mom invited me to go with her to a women's refuge panel, and it was really eye opening. But there were a lot of women there, I will
Hmm.
say. But things like that, I think if I get myself into more volunteer stuff like that, I might maybe find more people, more men who are interested in just having like being more helpful and
Yes.
being more, giving.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, I did some volunteering. I mean, it's been a while now actually, but I did do some volunteering. They have a thing here in London where they do at Christmas. You know, they'll do a thing for homeless people, and they'll have a place for them to stay, and they'll give food and stuff like that. And I volunteered there, and there was a lot of like really cool people there. You know, there was a lot of like, I mean, men and women, and you know, you'd end up meeting people, and kind of, I think I ended up going out with one girl afterwards and stuff like that. So it is definitely quite a good thing, a good place to just to meet. I mean, unless and if there's anything that is sort of, I don't know whether you could look on meetups on Facebook. You know, I think Facebook has a
oh,
meetups thing, and see whether there's any either Christian related events happening in your area, or even sort of tangentially um, related, like, you know, like a dance, but it's a Christian focused dance or something like that. I think
oh yeah,
that kind of
that's
thing
cool.
is really, and you said that you're introverted, and that's fine. I mean, I'm kind of, I mean, even though doing this and stuff, but I am kind of introverted in the sense that, you know, I like my own space. I like to, you know, have my own privacy and time and stuff. But you have to, for the purposes of this, you have to push through that to some extent, you know,
Right.
and just be out there. And I would say with women, it's different because I'm not generally, you know, the guys should really be making the first move. So it's not about you going around and sort of hitting on people, because, you know, you should just be there and obviously look at the aesthetics as much as you can, and just be there. But I would certainly, if you see guys that you like and you think, oh, he's appealing, I would certainly give, women tend to give those signals, don't they? So maybe it's a smile, or maybe it's a little bit of eye contact or something like that, you know, making the guy feel as comfortable that he can approach without getting shot down in a really rude or sort of abrupt way is going to put you in good stead. Or even what you can also do, say you were at a situation, you know, like you were at the bar or something like that, and there's a guy and he stands next to you at the bar. You could even you could ask him a question that's not a pickup question, but you could say something like, "Oh, that's a nice drink. What's that?" or whatever, right? To give him an opportunity then to get into the conversation. You know what I mean? So it's not you being
Mm-hmm.
obvious, but it is you opening up the option for them to come to you, if that makes sense. Because I think a lot of guys, the problem that they have is approach anxiety. They see a woman and they think
Mm-hmm.
she's attractive, but then they're like, oh shit, you know. So you want to make it, anybody that you see and you kind of like them and you think, oh, I kind of like to get to know him. I think you want to make it as easy for him to, you know, to facilitate that as possible without obviously you actually having to go in and do the approach.
It's interesting you say that because I have actually done that before at a bar where I saw this guy dancing at a in a mosh pit, and I actually really liked it. And I went up to him and complimented him on his abilities to dance, and I said, "Hey, like, do you want to switch phone numbers?" And we did, but I never heard from him. But I still was very proud of myself for going up to him and saying hello.
Well, you know, I mean, like it happens fairly rarely. I mean, like, even, you know,
Yeah.
a friend of mine, James, you know, very very good looking guy. He will always say, even in his lifetime, he's had probably, there's a few occasions where women have maybe come up to him. It's even happened to me. I've had there's been a few occasions, like a couple of occasions, two, three, whatever, in my lifetime. You know, a woman's maybe approached me in a way, you know, but what will happen more frequently is either that they'll give you a look, or they'll give you a smile, or they'll do something. It's not an overt thing. But I mean, look, the reality is, if there was a woman and I thought she was attractive, and she came up to me and she said, oh, I like the way that you know, I like what you're wearing, or I like how you dance, or whatever, that would be great. You know, I would be totally on board with that, and it would be like, give me an opportunity then to start the conversation with her, you know. So I think like with anything, I mean, like life is short. You may as well, you don't have to put
Yeah.
yourself out there. You're not going up and saying, "Oh, I find you incredibly attractive and I really want to date you." You know, because then if they say, "Oh, thank you very much," and then turn away, then you haven't lost anything. You've got plausible deniability, but you put yourself in the frame to allow something to happen. So I think that the fact that you had the balls to do that before, I think, is great. And doing that kind of thing,
Yeah.
you know, or at least making it easier for
Mm-hmm.
guys that you're interested in to approach, that I think will stand you really in good stead.
I agree. I
It's
completely agree. Yeah. It's interesting because I'm very introverted, but there's a big part of me that has grown to understand how to move through social situations. So
Yeah.
it's played to my favor in the dating realm as well.
Well, I had to do
It's
the
very
same.
interesting.
I had to do the same thing, and I mean, it's maybe different, a little bit different from a male point of view, but I mean, like, I was absolutely, you know, I was terrified of women. I was actually very inept socially anyway, even with guys. And then, you know, and then I've completely flipped it on my head when I hit the age of about 20, and it became, rather than being this thing I was incredibly afraid of, it became this thing that actually became really fun and almost like a game. And even if I was getting rejected, and obviously, you know, you do get a lot of rejection, it's just part of the way life is as a guy, it was still fun. You know, just the challenge of putting yourself out there and thinking, shit, you know, like you were saying, you know, oh, I went and talked to that girl. I mean, yeah, she shot me down, but at least I did it, right? And then you can feel good about yourself, just the fact that you did it. So I think what you'll find is just even putting yourself in these situations, even if it is slightly outside your comfort zone, that's going to improve your confidence. You're going to feel better about yourself just for having done it, you know? Because the worst thing any of us can do if we want to find somebody or we want to, you know, kickstart our dating life or whatever is to basically, you know, isolate and not really meet other people. We need to find ways to put ourselves in front of other people, basically. So that, I think, is you know, we've definitely got a few ideas now, I think, that you can start to action, I think.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely appreciate the advice because I don't think I would have thought of all of that on my own.
I mean,
As much
yeah,
as I think about this stuff.
I think so. What we could do, if you like, is if you try to do some of that stuff, try to get yourself out there a bit more, and maybe meet some guys, whether it's online, whether it's at some of these social events and stuff like that, and kind of like see what comes through. And then if you want, we could do another call and we could talk about that, because then maybe then you get to the next stage of the issue, which is like, okay, well, I'm meeting some guys, but they're not kind of, well, I don't want to second guess, but let's say, yeah, I'm meeting these guys, but they're not quite what I'm looking for, or he did this and I'm not sure what to do now, or you know what I mean? Like, then we get to the next level of challenge. So if you want to then, you know, keep in touch, and we can maybe even do another, you know, we'll have another chat about it a bit further down the line. That could
For
be,
sure, yeah.
that could work. Because
I
just
think
sorry,
go ahead.
no, just speaking candidly, I mean, at the moment, have you got anything sort of on the table as far as prospects are concerned? Are you talking to any guys? Is there anybody out there, or is it kind of just tumbleweed?
It's pretty much tumbleweeds. There is like one guy who messages me like maybe once a month.
Mm,
And it's a guy that so my best, or not my best friend, but one of my really good friends had a show down in Florida during the Rockville festival that they have. And I really wanted to see him play with my favorite artist, Evanescence. So I went down there, saw
Evanescence,
him.
classic.
Yes, I love
Mm,
her to death. She got me through high school. Hi,
mm.
got that heart here. Um, and when I was there watching him play, my friend play, there was a guy who came up to me and said hello, and we got to talking, and he's like really into music and stuff. But he literally, like, every time he talks to me, he's like, do you want to come down to Florida? I'm like, no, I don't like Florida at all. It's like my least favorite state in the entire planet, and I never want to go there unless I absolutely have to. And the only reason I went down there was for my friend and because my favorite artist was going to be there. It was the only time I've ever gone down there voluntarily on my own, like ever. So.
But you seem, I mean, why don't you like Florida? You seem quite, you know, kind of conservative. I mean, surely is it like, I thought everyone loves Florida.
True. Ron DeSantis, we love him as a
Mm,
governor.
mm.
I think the thing for me was the humidity. It just killed
Oh
me.
yeah.
I pretty much died.
Well,
So,
yeah, I mean, I was
and
in.
then alligators, of course.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was in Miami last year a few times, and I mean, I was there in August, and it was ridiculous. I mean, you just walk out of the you know, the apartment, and you're just soaking wet immediately. I mean, it's terrible, but yeah, I
Exactly.
mean, I think, yeah, I mean, with all of these things, I mean, if you meet somebody and you gel and they live in a different state, or you can make that work, but ideally, we want to be meeting people closer to home.
Yeah.
Ideally, just
Yeah.
for obvious reasons, because otherwise, then, you know, you get into a kind of long distance type thing, and that's not going to be any good either, really. So, you know, at the same time, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you like the guy, if he's if it, I mean, I suppose it depends what his motivation was though as well. Because if he's saying, "Hey, come
Yeah.
over to Florida," and then it's a bit of a hookup type situation, maybe that's you know,
Yeah.
that's not probably what you want, right? So,
No, don't want to add to my body count. Thank you very much. But
because what?
also,
Yeah,
yeah, and I don't know what his intentions are. And I'm just kind of like talking to him as a friend. I'm trying not to like raise his hopes or anything.
yeah,
But
okay,
I think, yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is like I do want to have a connection more than I don't care about distance as much. I mean, the guy that I almost married, I keep bringing him up, but it's a great example. I was living in an entirely different city when we were dating, and I loved it. Like I was able to call him every day. Like it wasn't like it was more him who wanted to like have me on the phone every day, but I was just like I was just as happy like long distance with him than I was like as I was when we were together. Like it was just knowing that there was somebody that I had. There was somebody that I
Yeah.
connect with, and that's somebody that I love. So it was just a wonderful. I don't care where I am in the world. It's like yes, I have someone. It's great.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean, because it feels like then there's that sort of like, oh, there's that, at least there's that security out there, and you know
Yeah.
whatever. But generally, I don't recommend long distance relationships. Certainly to, I mean, it can.
Yeah.
It sounds like you were pretty chilled about it, but certainly for guys, it can fuck
Yeah.
their head. It can mess their
It's
head
a
up
lot
because
harder.
they're like, oh shit, you
Yeah.
know, what's she doing, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And also as well, because I mean, the other thing is as well, and we maybe, you know, we don't go into all of this because it will take too long. But I mean, it seems like when you're saying that, it seems like actually the introversion is coming through a little bit, because you're talking about actually meeting a partner and that leading to marriage and stuff like that. But that's going to be actually, you're actually, then you are actually going to have to live with them, and you're going to have to do all of that stuff. You know,
True.
it sounds like actually you're quite happy just being at home and doing a call occasionally, and you're like, oh great, you know.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So that might be another. I don't know. That's the final frontier, isn't it? But I guess that's further down the line.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah, great stuff. All right. Well, look, thank you ever
Thank
so much
you.
for calling in. I really appreciate it. It's been a great conversation. I hope I've been some small help, and please just
Yeah.
keep in touch. And then look, if give us an update, and then maybe we can do another call and talk about, okay, so how's things progressed, and you know, where do we get to the next stage?
Well, thank you. I appreciate you, and I will definitely figure something out.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I will talk
Good
to
stuff.
you soon.
I would say, as I say, the bottom line is you need to be meeting more people. You need to be meeting more
Yeah.
guys, basically, because it's exactly the same for a guy. You know, if a guy's sitting there and he wants a girlfriend, but he's not meeting anyone, or he's talking to one girl every 2 months, it's just not enough. You know, you need to get some volume through the door. So I would explore all the avenues we've discussed. Start getting some guys where you're in contact, you're having maybe calls with them, you're chatting with them on, you know, DM or WhatsApp or whatever, and then see where you are. Okay, right now, out of these, is there anybody here that could be a decent prospect for me? And then you've got to figure out, right, how do I move that forward?
Sounds amazing. Thank you.
Good stuff. Okay, thanks ever so much for joining.
Thank you.
No worries. All
Have a
right, speak
great
soon.
day.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.